Amen. If you have your Bibles, Ephesians is where we're going to be real quick this morning. Now, this morning's a little bit different. If you're new to the Grove, it's a little bit different in the sense that we've had baby dedication, we've had baptism. It's raining, I hear, outside, and some of y'all are worried about the Masters, but you're here instead, so that's cool. But this morning, we are actually going to be talking about the future of the Grove and where we're headed. So if you're a visitor, I would say this to you. It looks a little bit different this morning, but don't make this your only visit with us. Come back, check out the rest of what we're doing. But if you are a visitor, at least you're going to know where we're headed, okay? And so you'll know about what's going on in the life of the church. Ephesians chapter 3, and I want to read a couple of verses to you, and then I want to talk to you, and then we will move forward, all right? Ephesians 3, verse 13. I read these verses, well, I've read them a lot, but I read these verses about 6 years ago. And I challenged our church. And so this morning I'm going to pick up where I started 6 years ago, okay? The Bible says this, Ephesians 3:13. Therefore I asked you not to lose heart at my tribulations on your behalf, for they are your glory. For this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name, that He would grant you according to the riches of His glory to be strengthened with power through His Spirit in the inner man, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, and that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and the height and the depth, and to know the love of Christ which surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled up to all the fullness of God. And these are our verses right here that we kind of stood on several years ago. Now to Him who is able to do far more abundantly beyond all that we ask or think, according to the power that works within us, to Him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus to all generations forever and ever. Amen. Jesus, I love you. I thank you so much for this morning. I thank you for your word. And I pray that you would be just about our service this morning, that you would teach us things, that you would give us courage, and God, that you would challenge us. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. You may be seated. Well, it's already been a fantastic morning. I don't know if you get used to it or not. I don't get used to it, but what a great morning where you could come to church and you could see parents stand up with their children's gift from God and dedicate those back to Christ, and then also see where children follow in believers' baptism. It's already been a great morning. But last week we started a new series called Courageous, and Courageous was all about God giving us the courage to do something with our life. That we would step out and that we would attempt courageous things for Jesus Christ, that we would walk in courage. This has been our whole understanding for the month of April and for Easter. And last week I talked about recovering in courage, and then I talked about it again on Wednesday night, and I talked about Peter and how he was talking big, and then he kind of lost his courage, and then what Jesus did to kind of help him get his courage back, because courage is hard to deal with. In fact, if you think about courage is great, is awesome. Everybody's courageous until fear shows up, right? Was it Mike Tyson that said everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth? I think that's what Mike said. I think Mike said that. I think that's who said it, right? He said everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the mouth. Courage is a weird thing. It's easy for me to sit here and talk to you about being courageous. It's easy for me to talk about having courage. But the moment that fear comes, we lose our courage. And many of us walk in a way that we've lost our courage. And so we've been talking about that. We've been talking about what God might be calling us to do. And then this morning, we're talking about the next step for the Grove. This morning is about the church walking in courage. It's about us finally taking the step that we've been dreaming about forever and ever and ever. It's about us finally stepping up as a church and doing what God's called us to do. Not that we've been wasting time. In fact, I think what you're going to find out is not only have we not been wasting time, but we have been working diligently behind the scenes for several months and several years to get to this point. Now, listen to me. I'm a lot of things, but one of the best things I am is a dreamer. I dream, man. I dream about what God's calling us to do. I dream about futures. I'm a dreamer, man. I'm a glass is always half full kind of guy. That's who I am. And dreaming is one thing. I can dream up anything, but following through is a whole another understanding. In fact, you can have a dream that God's given you, but not have the right time to operate or walk in that dream. And so this morning I want to talk about what time is it now. And I want to share with you the understanding of where we're headed as a church. No more talking about it. No more dreaming about it, but actually doing what God has called us to do. So I have to do that, and they've taken my podium away because here in just a minute I'm going to bring some people up here and set them down. They couldn't see behind my podium, and that's a bad thing for you because I have ADD, and whether you know it or not, my podium kind of keeps me centered. I'm liable to walk off stage, jump in that baptistry. Let's just hope it all goes okay, all right? Because I don't have any center to bring me back to, so I'm just up here doing it. So let me take you on a journey to set up where we're headed. In just a few moments, you're going to be able to see on our screen where we're headed and what our next steps are. And you've probably talked to some people in the hallway, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, about what I'm about to announce to the church. I can say this to you, Tyler Brown is a nervous wreck. He's doing better this service than he did last service, but he is a nervous wreck. If you ever want to see what a 6'4", 6'6", what are you? 6'6". I know he's 6'4". He always tells me 6'6" because he thinks he is. Hey, can I tell y'all something? No, I'll tell y'all later. I've actually seen him standing in an elevator on his tiptoes because the guy that got on beside us was taller than him, and him raised up on his tiptoes. So anyways, whatever. When you're short like me, everybody's taller than you. You just don't even pay any attention to it. Tyler has worked so hard in helping our church get to this place too, and this morning he's nervous. He's nervous because, and I asked him, I said, what are you nervous about? I don't normally get nervous. There's only certain times that I get nervous. I look forward to church. I look forward to preaching. I'm not normally nervous. And if anything, I'm normally amped up too much and I have to slow my heart rate down. What are you nervous about? He's like, Phillip, because after Sunday, it's out of the bag. Cat's out of the bag. We got to do it, man. The cat's out of the bag. And he's like, are you not nervous? I'm like, no, let's open the bag. Let the cat out. That's where I'm at because I've been having to keep a secret. I want to take you on a journey to kind of help you understand who we are and where we're headed, especially if you've joined this church within the last 2 or 3 years, or in the past 6 years, you may have forgotten certain things. We've had several, and I can think of about a handful of days in the life of this church since I've been the pastor of it, that we've had big days like today. And in most of those cases, we have followed through with what we've been dreaming about, but there's always been one that's just been kind of hanging out there. I became the pastor of the Grove 7 years ago on April 1st. Y'all don't, maybe you remember, maybe you don't, but on April Fool's Day is when this church voted me in as their pastor. Y'all just waiting on me to go, April Fools, or whatever. But I've been here 7 years, so it's worked out for everybody. So in those past 7 years, God has really done some amazing things in my life and in the life of this church. When I showed up here over 7 years ago, we were Cedar Grove Baptist Church. We still are Cedar Grove Baptist Church, but we go by the Grove. God has changed a lot in the past several years. And the reason that is because when I showed up here, I was a broken pastor, a broken man. And the church that I ultimately got to pastor was a broken church and broken people. And so when I walked into this church, it was all red. It red everything. Red carpet, red pews, red stage. I had a big old cross up here. Nothing wrong with that. There's a big old cross pulpit. And white walls, and about 40 or 50 people when I walked in here. And during that time, that was over 8 years ago actually, and during that time I began to be their interim pastor, where all I had to do, I had the easiest job on the planet, dude. I just rolled down here to Kingston every Sunday, would roll in about 30 minutes early, preach, and then get in my car and go home, and everybody else handled it throughout the week, right? But God began to mold the hearts of this church and myself together. And we begin to heal together. We begin to lean on each other. We begin to take up for one another. Because when they would go out in public and say, Phillip Martin is our pastor, they'd say, have you heard about that guy? And they would take up for me. And then when I would go out and say, yeah, I'm pastor in Cedar Grove, and they go, have you heard about that church? And I would take up for you. And so it really worked out to be a really kind of good thing. We had to fight for one another. During that time, though, God gave us a vision. And God gave a vision to me for the future of this church. When you have 40 or 50 people at a church, if you gain 5 or 10, that's a good thing, and most people would say that's success. Just don't tear anything up. Just don't lose the 40 you got, and you're successful. But that's not the way God had wired me. God had wired me in such a way that I not only wanted to be a pastor and be a part of a church body, but I want to leave the world different than the way that I found it. And if I'm going to spend my life somewhere, I want the world to know that I lived it there, and I want lives to be changed. Don't you? We only got one life to live. And if you're going to live it here and you're going to be a part of this, shouldn't the world know it when you're gone? I mean, shouldn't they miss you when you're gone? I mean, shouldn't you have such an impact on people's lives that people say, not only am I glad that I knew them, but I'm glad they live because it's forever changed my life. And so I kind of went at Roane County that way. I kind of went at Kingston, and I definitely went at Cedar Grove that way. And I began to pray, and I said, God, give us a vision. Give us a vision of who we're going to be. We can't worship the past. And I'm not a big traditions type worshiper. I mean, look at me this morning. I look like I got dressed in the dark, but it's on purpose. But God, give me a fresh vision. What is needed in this area? And so a few Sundays after being down here and loving the people and the people loving me and being voted in as pastor over 7 years ago, I stood on this platform and I shared Scripture. And the Scripture that I shared was the one that I just shared with you. It was Ephesians 3, verse 20 and 21. And here was the words. Now to Him who is able to do far more abundantly beyond all that we ask or think, according to the power that works within us, to Him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus to all generations forever and ever. Amen. That was the verses that God gave me. That's the way that we begin to believe as the Grove. And we took off into the future believing that God could do more than we could believe or think. But we thought a lot. And we believed a lot. We dreamed a lot. And we began to dream together, and we said, okay, if this church is going to make any kind of impact into the future, what needs to happen? And we began to look at programming, and we began to preach the gospel. We said, hey, listen, here's the main thing. The main thing is if we don't get anything else right, we want to get Scripture right. If we don't get anything else right, let's get Jesus Christ right. We're going to start right at our cornerstone, which is Jesus Christ, and we have preached Him faithfully for over 8 years here at the Grove. And I'm going to tell you something. God has blessed the preaching of His Word. We have seen hundreds of people come to know Jesus Christ. We've seen so many people come to be baptized. We went from having 40 people on a Sunday to being called from the state and saying, hey, could you all come to a meeting? Because there's only a handful of churches that are doing what you all are doing, and we'd like for you all to come and tell us what you're doing down there in Roane County, Tennessee. And Tyler and myself, we sat at a table with churches from Nashville, from Brentwood, and then they said, where are you guys from? We said, Kingston, Tennessee. And they said, where's that? And said, just hang a left down there and you'll find us. So we were down, and God was blessing. But God gave us a vision, and the vision was to go where nobody else would go. We didn't desire to be a church that everybody else was being. We're not trying to be a cookie-cutter church. If you're looking for a church, and I'm not being ugly, please do not hear me be ugly. I'm just going to save you a lot of time and me a lot of time, a lot of heartache and hurt feelings. If you're looking for a church that is just doing what everybody else does or trying to figure out how somebody else did it and just recreate it, that's not who we are. We fell in love with the idea that God selected us, put us here for a reason as an original, and that's who we're trying to be. We want to be an original in Jesus Christ. We're not trying to build what other people have built. We're not trying to do what other people are doing. It doesn't mean that if somebody doesn't have a good idea, we won't steal it every now and then. But we're not trying to do that. What we want to do is we want to be a church that God planted here for Himself first and for others second. And so we went at it that way, and we began to preach the gospel, and we began to say, listen to me, we're not going to make you come to us, we're going to come to where you are. In fact, I have a whole philosophy. I challenge my staff. Don't sit in your office. Don't sit in your office. Help coach basketball teams and baseball teams. I myself am the drug court coordinator in Roane County. We are out and active. We hang out at golf courses. We go to the schools. We said, hey, listen, the church isn't supposed to be boxed up. The church is supposed to be on the move. And so we started to meet people, and we started to love people where they were. And we said, hey, listen, not only that, but there's this whole addiction thing that's going on in Roane County. And we threw our hat in the ring, and we began to be one of the front-runner churches that helps people with addiction. We have step classes, and we go to other places and are part of Celebrate Recovery. We have folks that come from all over that are part of this church in both services throughout the month that are battling addiction, but you have a pastor who loves people who are battling addiction and helps them find help, and God has raised up leaders here to be a part of that. We begin to say our children need an opportunity to have a great place to go to school. There's nothing wrong with public schools, and some of you are public school teachers, and let me say this, I have your back, I love you 1,000%, I'm for you. But that doesn't mean that God isn't wanting to do something else as well and give children an opportunity. And because of that, we have a dream of starting the Grove Christian Academy, which would be just like a CAK or a Webb, but here in Roane County for folks, where we could go and have different expectations for our children. And we begin to dream that way. Out of that was birth PDO. We do 2 days a week here in our building, and a daycare that we have 5 days a week out back near the dumpster. But that's where it is. It's just easier if you got diapers just to walk over there. So we just made it easy. And God taught me something a long time ago, and I want to share this with you this morning, and I want to share with you something. Is if you'll be faithful in the small things, He'll open up doors to bigger things. If you're going to say, God will go, and He opens the door to go, and then we all go, well, there's a whole lot of red tape here. We need to pray about it and vote on it and do all this stuff. You know what God will do? God will say, hey, while y'all are getting it together over there, making sure it's okay with men, I'm going to go over here to people that want to follow in faith. It just happens that you're a place and we're a place down here that half the time we jump before we even know where we're landing. And God has opened our parachute time and time again and allowed us to increase our influence and help people. And what you saw this morning is a direct reflection of that. So we stood up here and we dreamed together. In 2013, 2014, take you on a quick journey here. In 2013, 2014, it became very apparent as God turned our 40 people into 80 people and our 80 people into 120 people and our 120 people into 150 people. I was able to start hiring some staff. It became very apparent that what we had here was not going to fit the need for where we were going. We realized that if we were ever going to be the church that God wanted us to be, we had to get out of the shadow of the past and start living in the vision of the future. Out of that dreaming and planning and praying, we felt like, and the leadership at the time of the church felt like one of the greatest things that we could do was relocate. Doesn't mean we don't like old Johnston Valley Road. It doesn't mean that we don't appreciate the past. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that God was on the move. And so we wanted to be on the move with Him. At that time, the church voted to relocate as a church. And you say, well, Phil, why would you want to relocate? Well, namely, because every Sunday morning it's like playing Frogger in our parking lot. You ever notice that? We are the only church that I know of that has a road that runs right through the parking lot. Do you have an east parking lot and a west parking lot? Nope, we've just got a road parking lot, just park there, right? Namely, we don't have enough parking. Namely, we had to lease an acre from the lady across the street, and she was so kind to us when we called her and said, Miss Meisinger, I need so much help here. I can't park everybody. And we have people actually leaving on a Sunday morning. Can we lease a piece of property from you? And she said, yes. The good part of that is she leased a piece of property to us. The bad part about that is like on a Sunday like this morning, you don't want to park on that property. You know why? Because it's a field, and the field gets wet, and there's mud. You don't want to get your church shoes muddy, do you? And so what we end up having is we have a parking lot that can't suit the people that are coming here, and we have facilities that can't suit people that are coming here, and we're making what we do have work. We have used it and used it and used it and never made excuses. We just make it work. Our team does not make excuses. So we have facilities here. This particular facility that you're sitting in was built in 1982, and the facility right next to it, the other church building, was built in 1956, and then all the hallways and all the classrooms were built in that time frame as well. There was no real thought on how to build it. They just built it, and they just began to connect hallways. That's why when you drop your children off in our children's area and nursery area, and you go, well, I've seen better, you have. Quite frankly, you have. But I'll tell you what we haven't done is we haven't backed up and said we're not going to take care of children until we get the best thing. Here's what we said. We'll make what we have right now work, and God's going to bless us in the future. And we have. If you walk up and down our hallway, sir, and you're new here, you're going to see stains all over the carpet. There's wax stains right there. I can see them right here. There's coffee stains under your seats. There's stains all up and down the hall. If you look at our walls real good, they probably need another coat of paint. You say, does it bother you? Not one bit. Well, why not? You ought to take some pride. Take some pride in God's church. I am taking pride, and I'm not being facetious, but I'm going to tell you something. There's more churches with pristine paint and great carpet because nobody ever walks their hallways. I'd rather have one that's been chewed up and spit out sideways because we're reaching so many people than to be able to put something on the wall that says, please don't touch the walls. You understand what I'm talking about? We have used our facilities. We've done it. We've done everything that we possibly could. We've got people that met this morning, I believe, John, I believe your group met out back in our preschool area, which is on the back side of our particular campus right now by the dumpster, and they met out there, and you go, well, that's really cool. The only reason they did it is because we're out of space in all of these facilities, and you may say, well, that's cool. They got to sit out there in the preschool area. Yeah, that's not really cool when you're sitting in those little bitty plastic chairs that are about 16 inches, right? Feeling like Billy Madison all Sunday morning, right? We have literally used every single space in this room. And so we began to look, and we voted to relocate. Well, in that process of relocating, we began to look at places that we might relocate to. And some of y'all will remember this, some of you won't. But on Highway 70, Ladwright Road, and then Longville Road, we purchased 47 plus or minus acres. And we said, this is where God is giving us. Myself and Jason Weaver spent countless hours walking over there and meeting with folks. And then we led the church to vote to purchase that property, and we purchased it. And so now we had a piece of property, and we had the permission of the church to relocate. Now began a sequence of events that has forever reshaped our church. Not only did we have a vision, but we had a place to go. We had signs out there that said, coming soon, the Grove. Everywhere I went, people say, when are you going to break ground? When are you going to move? Well, something happened to us, and here's what happened to us. During that time, we were not in a position yet to build. We were not financially at a place where we could build. And one of the promises I've always made, no matter who's been on staff or who's been in the leadership at the time at the church, was this: I never want to sacrifice ministry for bricks and mortar. I'm not going to do it. I would rather keep using what we do have so that we can keep reaching people. But the day that we get to where we can do ministry and build at the same time, we have to do it. During this same amount of time that we couldn't build yet, but we had the prospect of building, here's what happened. Is we had people, we were running numbers like you couldn't believe. We jumped up from 150 to 250. We jumped up from 250 to 350. We were hitting 700, over 700. And just about 18 months ago or 12 months ago, we hit right at 800 on a Sunday morning here at the Grove. I'm telling you, God was moving during this whole time. God has been moving. God says, hey, if you're going to say you're going to reach people, I'm going to ask you to do your thing, and I'm going to do my thing. And it just began to explode. And we pass people, and you meet people, and God was doing it. But here was an adverse effect. Because we couldn't build, and because we couldn't make parking better, and because we didn't have enough space, and because we didn't have a facility like this morning. You look around here, there's some empty spots. You see that? But up in the balcony, it's full. Here's what the statisticians would tell you. You're at 85% max. You know what happens at 85% max? I don't know if any of y'all do church growth, or you just, I don't know. But I'll tell you what happens. At 85% max, you stop growing and you start going the other way. Did you know that? That's exactly what happens. At this point, we're not going to grow anymore. We are stifled. And you say, well, start another service. Well, okay, that's what we did, right? And so it began to have an adverse effect. So we sat down and we said, hey, we've got to build. And the stewardship and the trustees and the executive team come back and said, Phillip, we cannot build right now. We don't have the money for it. I said, but I've got the property for it. They said, well, I don't care. We can't build yet. So in 2015, here's what we did, is we went out and expanded out. Some of y'all remember this. We launched a campus in Lenoir City. And people say, well, why are you launching a campus in Lenoir City? We were at 85%. We couldn't build anything. I mean, we could have added a 1:30 in the afternoon service. Ain't nobody coming to that in the summer. Y'all going to be on the lake. I know that. We could do a 7:30 in the morning service. Ain't nobody coming to that. And even if you do, I ain't. And so we just didn't work out. So we expanded to Lenoir City. We went up and we leased the old Ford building from a gentleman who had a gym in it at the time. We went up there. We had folks coming from Lenoir City and West Knoxville to the Grove, and so we started our LC campus. It was a way that we could continue to grow while also planning to build, right? And so we said, okay, we're going to be multi-site now. And over the next few years, God blessed that campus. It was awesome. We had ups and downs, but mostly ups. And we saw a ton of people come to know Christ. And we saw a ton of people come to know the Grove and to be a part of that. We were on a 3-year lease there, and as we got closer to the end of that lease, the owner of the particular facility that we had wanted to renegotiate the lease. And I said, that will be great. We need to renegotiate that lease because I don't like the lease that we have now, and we're going to renegotiate it. So we began to sit down and renegotiate the lease. But it was during that time as we were renegotiating the lease, God was closing a door. At the time, we didn't know God was closing a door. What God was closing, we felt like was a failure, to be honest with you, from a leadership perspective. Not only was the negotiating going bad, it was going the wrong way. They were going up on the lease instead of down on the lease. So I prayed about it, talked with my leadership at the time, talked with some of the trustees, talked with whoever was around me, and I said, here's going to be what we're going to have to do. And this was a bad day in my life as a leader of this church because I felt like a failure. I said, we're going to close the LC campus. They said, are you sure you want to do that? I said, we have to. It's not fiscally responsible to keep paying that lease. It's going to stifle ministry, and we're not going any further. We can't do it. To only use that campus one day a week does not make sense for what we're paying for it. So I went and met with the LC folks, and I asked them, I said, just just take a chance. Just trust me. We're gonna close this campus, and I need to ask you to come back down to Kingston. And some people said, that's too far. I was like, it's 12 minutes, right? I've driven further for pizza. We're talking about Jesus. And we lost a few, we did. But we gained a ton of folks because when we closed that campus, a couple of things happened. Number one, we moved a bunch of LC folks back here that we had picked up in the 3 years. From that particular venture, we got a couple of new folks. You're going to hear me say this over and over and over, and I'm going to keep saying it. If your vision is to paint, God will send painters. But if your vision is to change the world, God will send world changers. You need to know that. And where you get those different world changers depends on where you are. In this particular case, we don't want to paint. We have painted. That's not what we want to do. We want to change our community. We want to change our state, change our world for Jesus Christ. I can't do it by myself, and you can't do it by yourself, but God can assemble a team. So when we moved back from LC, we had some new leadership that came with us. Namely, we had Jesse Burris, who is now the trustee, or our chairman of our trustee, and we had Ryan Tenry, who is part of our stewardship. Ryan Tenry is a wealth manager. He works with folks in trying to protect their assets into the future so they have enough to retire on. And he is on our stewardship team, which creates this weird dynamic. He says things like this, give me $10 and I'll turn it into $100. I say, give me $10 and I'll spend it today and we'll find $10 more tomorrow. You understand what I'm talking about? He's all about making money grow, and I'm all about walking in faith, baby. You know, Jesus is going to show up. And so God had to put different people like this on this team. We already had our core group of guys that we've been working with for the past several years, but there were other pieces that we needed, and God began to assemble this team. The second thing that happened when we moved back from LC was this. God taught the Grove something, and you may not even know this, but here's what He taught. He taught us this, that He was blessing us, and we were walking in obedience. But we had learned over a 3-year lease, we had the fiscal ability to pay for a $1 million building if we wanted to. Based on what we were paying in the lease, it was no problem to pay for a $1 million building. And bet, I didn't tell all of our leadership about that, right? So we came back and we said, guys, this isn't going to work. What are we going to do? At that time, after we had closed the LC, here's what we had decided to do. We decided that what we were going to do is we were going to do something while we were waiting to build. And we went and did our bluegrass and barbecue. You remember this? And we walked on it, and we had it all mowed and done up there. And we went up there. We were going to start our sports fields, and we were determined to do that. We'd sit back. We had the men and the people to do it. We knew where we were going to do it. And so we walked up there on that bluegrass and barbecue. Everybody got excited. And then here's what happened. When we went to pull the trigger on doing that, we sat down with some folks and they said, this is not going to be a smart move. And I said, why is that? And they said, because you're going to build a field, that will work. You're going to have people come up here, that will work because it's needed. But here in about whenever you want to build, you're going to have to dig this whole field up and have to do another field to put your building where your field's going to be. Does that sound very smart? I said, how much are we talking on the fields? He said, several $100,000. I said, that does not sound smart at all. But I couldn't tell you all that, and we weren't going to share that, so what we did was we went back to the drawing board, and we sat down and said, okay, that's going to extend that time. We're not going to start our field yet. The people are ready to do it, but we got to do something. During that time, I had a ton of people around me. When I say around me, I'm talking about just around, not close friends, just people around. They said, do you know that property you got? You can't build on it. There ain't no way you could build on it. Have you seen all the rock that's over there? Have you seen all the cedar trees? You can't build on that property. There's no way you could build on that property. And then I'd have people say things like this, even if you do build on that property, it's going to take you almost $2 million to get the property ready to build on. What kind of budget are you wanting to work with? I said, well, not $2 million worth of dirt work, right? Well, you'll never be able to build on that property. And so it kind of got me down. And so I was struggling with it, and I thought, man, me and Jason looked at this. Me and Jason, no, we can do this. And Jason Weaver, who we were up there and we were doing it, and I was like, man, I know we can do this. But everywhere I turned, it was like you couldn't do it. What did I tell you earlier? When courage is right on the footsteps of doing something great, who comes in? Fear. We spent days and days in fear. You can't do it for this reason. It won't work here. You're in Roane County. You can't lead those folks to do all this stuff. It won't work. It's going to cost too much. And so here's what we begin to do. I said, folks, we got to do something. So we begin to look at other pieces of property. Over the last 2.5 years, we've looked at every piece of available property in Roane County. And in some cases, we've looked at pieces of property all the way up to the Loudoun County line. We've traveled. We've looked at it. If it was over a certain amount of acres, we would go and we would look at it. The reason is because, as I told you before, you can average 100 person per acre. That's why it mattered how many acres we got. You can't just put a church that we're wanting to build on 3 or 4 acres. It won't work. You're going to hem yourself in. We're thinking into the future. We're living in 1982 building as we stepped out of 1956. If we're going to build something in 2020, it don't need to be up by 2021. Do you understand what I'm talking about? So we begin to look at properties. We begin to look and say, okay, what we'll do is we'll sell our property and we'll purchase this property where we can build it because it's going to be too much to build on our property. During that time, there was a place that came available that we heard about called the Preserve at the Clinch. Y'all ever heard of the Preserve at the Clinch? It's an old rarity property. It's out off Galahar like you're headed to Oak Ridge. Had a guy call me and said, hey, listen, this piece of property has been available for 12 years. It's set there, and no one's bought it. It's got land for days. It's got lots that you can build on, but it's got a community center up front, and they're wanting to sell all of it. And I said, okay. So we got our group together. We went over there. We walked around it. We looked at it. We said, well, this might actually work because we could buy the community center, and then we could buy the property behind it. We could build everything that we wanted here on about 100, 150 acres. That's, in fact, how much that we looked at. And then they can keep building houses behind it. That's brilliant. Build a church where there's houses, right? It's church growth 101. And we looked at it. So we called them and said, hey, we'd like to look at your property. And so what they did is they drove up from Atlanta. When we got to this meeting, we sat around a table, and we sat in there, and as we looked at the plot and the map and all the stuff, I sat there with this guy from Atlanta, and I was really getting into it. I got to tell you this. Can I tell him this whole story? I'm telling him. So I really got into it. Now, in this meeting was all of our trustees, our executive team, and our stewardship team. I was not authorized to offer anything at any time. We were there to gather information. But I got so worked up like this is going to be it that I got into the conversation. And this dude from Atlanta was trying to slick me, and I thought, if God's for me, who can be against me? And so we talked and we talked. It hadn't sold for 12 years. I know how much you're wanting. And I looked him dead in the eye with all these people standing in there. And all of our really responsible human beings were there to keep me calm. All my bosses were in there at the time. And I said, sir, let's make the most of your trip. You've driven up from Atlanta. I know you're serious. We're prepared to offer you $1 million today for that building and all that property. And these guys that were around me went, like $1 million? And I'm looking at them like, trust me, I got this. It's going to be the deal of the century, you know what I mean? I'm sitting in there. And this guy looks back at me and says, I think we might be able to make something like that work. And then they were like, so we're walking out, and these guys are like this. My guys were with me, like, where are you going to get $1 million? I was like, just have faith. I don't know. Give Ryan $10. He can turn it into something. We're going to do something, right? We're going to figure it out. And they said, well, what do you think is going to happen? I said, boys, we've just bought our new piece of property. Now you got to get ready to sell our property, and we got to tell the church. This was the hardest day so far in this process for me. I left that afternoon on a high because I just knew that we were about to relocate to a pretty cool place, and they had a swimming pool. I thought, golly, that's cool. And so I went to a baseball game to coach. I was standing in Lenore City, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine and said, hey, I need to talk to you about this property. And I was like, go ahead, tell me, when we signing, how we getting $1 million? I knew, yeah, trust your boy, right? Said, yeah, the guy just called back, and somebody else has swooped in, paid full price, we're out, they've already sold it. I said, today? They said, yeah. I said, didn't you tell me it'd been for sale for 12 years? He said, yeah. I said, they sold it today? It's like, yeah. I was like just now? Like, I'm the first $1 million to offer, y'all are ready to kill me, and they sold it today? He's like, yeah. I'm like, are you kidding? He's like, no. And then I thought, they're just telling me that because we ain't got $1 million, and they just want to tell me that, so we... But it was true, it sold, and God shut the door. So we went back to the drawing board, and there was another piece of property that came open about 12, well, it's not open, but we thought it might be open, and I went and talked to this family about a piece of property that was right off the interstate. Several acres, and we talked about it. And we had a deal going. We talked price. We talked about what we'd put on it. We talked about if it was going to work, then we were going to go to the church and tell you about it, and we were going to sell our property and take this piece of property. And it felt really good that God had been closing doors to send me over here, and so we went over there. Thought we had a deal worked out, and I got a phone call one afternoon this fall, and they said, you know the property? I said, yeah. Well, they're out. I said, what do you mean they're out? They said, no, they just can't get a peace about it. They love you, they love the church, but they just can't get a peace about it. I was like, all right. So we went back to the drawing board. I called my stewardship team, and I asked for a meeting. I walked in on a Wednesday night, and I said, gentlemen, here's the deal. We've got to do something as a church. We've been talking about it and dreaming about it. We're at a particular place in time as a church that we have to do something. And here's the thing. I need to know what it is that we're going to do and where we're going to do it. Now, God has given us a piece of property, and I've heard for years that it was one of the dumbest moves we made because we can't build on it and all this other stuff, but I don't believe that. We have looked at every piece of property in Rome County, and God has closed every single door, and He keeps pushing us right back to where we first started. So what I need you guys to do is to please look at the facts. I need you to tell me if we can build. I need you to tell me how we will build. I need you to tell me when we can start. I need to know if banks are going to look at us cross-eyed when we ask for some money. I need to know if we're fiscally in a place to where we can do it and not choke out ministry. I need you guys to tell me if this is even possible, because I believe in my heart this whole thing was an act of obedience where God was confirming where we're supposed to be the whole time. I believe we're supposed to build where we said we were going to build. Can we make that happen? And they went to work, and Tyler and that team went to work. They started working with architects to see if it would really work. They started calling civil engineers, not just some dude that somebody knew somewhere, but like a civil engineer that would come in and look at our property. They called who'd you call? Geotech guys, yeah. I don't know all my terminology. Geotech guys to tell us if there was too much rock there or not. And with every single meeting that we had, those people would come back and say, not only is it possible for you to build, why haven't you? Why haven't you started yet? And I would look around the room and go, yeah, why haven't we started yet? Because we had been living in fear. Every door that the enemy tried to close, God kicked down. The rock is not an issue. Banking, not an issue. Finances, over the past 3 years, I need you to listen to me what you've done here and what your stewardship team has been able to do. We went from having less than about $100,000 in the bank to right now you're sitting at over $700,000 in the bank. Ready to go. We could cut a $500,000 check today to get started. Right? God has been preparing the whole time. As we sat in that room, it became very obvious that God wanted to do something. And I come to you today to say this to you. What we were thinking was too small. What we were dreaming was too small. God has a plan. Dreaming's over. Now it's time to do. Our community is longing for it. Our children need it. We just saw 10 babies dedicated and 3 walk through baptismal waters. And if you're not used to the Grove, this is not an unusual Sunday. We see this quite often. But it's time for moms and dads to step up and families to step up. And instead of walking in what could have been, we walk in the future that God has given us. I'm here this morning to tell you that the time is now. I'm here this morning to tell you it's time that we build. I'm here this morning to tell you that it's time that we make the next step. That we go to where God had given us 6 years ago, and that we put on it what God had birthed in our hearts years ago, and that we finally see our community forever changed. Instead of walking around in the shadows of the past, we're going to walk around in the daylight of the future. God has a plan for us if we only have the courage to step out and see it done. I want you to check out this video. It'll tell you everything you need to know. Dave? All right, so it's time. They're not leaving. Don't think this is a hostile takeover. I got some folks I want you to meet. This is our stewardship and executive team. Our trustees are involved as well, but I just didn't have enough seats up here for everybody. But this is the stewardship and the executive team who have been working diligently behind the scenes. I cannot say this enough. I want to say it again. I said it in the first service, but I want to say it again. Tyler Brown has worked nonstop and tirelessly over the past 6-7 months with this whole crew to get us to this point, and I'm so thankful for him. So they got me this little handy-dandy little laser pointer thing, and I'm going to show you some stuff. Here's what you need to know. Here's the facts, and you need to know this. We are going to break ground October 1st. Yeah, oh well. Yeah. We're going to break ground October 1st. Now, I tell you that because we've said, we've dreamed and we've planned and we've done all this kind of stuff, and I was reluctant to come up here and talk to you about anything till I knew that we could do it. Not only can we talk about it, but can we do it? And I'm so pumped because our community needs it. Listen to me, if you saw that, and I'm going to show you in just a moment, if you saw the church that we're building, it doesn't look just like a church, right? Because what we're building is more than just a church. We're building a community that people can engage Jesus Christ on different levels and different understandings, right? And we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves either. In everything that's ever been a part of our vision, it's all going to that 47 acres. Here's what I found out, that God was testing our obedience through this whole thing. Don't call me about any more property. Don't call me. I went to every piece you ever sent me to. I may not have told you I did, but I did. I have the ticks to prove it, right? So I've been there. But here's the deal. God gave us this property a while back, and through that time, as you look back to what all we've done, we never sat back and waited. We were always moving, always doing something, starting a campus, mowing that down, dreaming about ball fields. We were always moving forward and being obedient to God till He got us to the right time to act on today, okay? And so we're going to start on October the 1st. But let me show you what we're building, and there's more to come. This isn't completely done and boxed up. There's still some elements that are missing that do not matter to this morning. You say, well, are you going to vote? You've already voted to relocate and build. We've already voted to purchase the property, so there's no voting on that. But what we will do is when we start to talk about money, we will vote on that, but that's coming later, all right? But let me show you some things here. Let me show you what we got, and then I'll get you out of here so you can go check on the masters. All right, here we go. So this is our property. You like my laser pointer? That's cool. All right. I never get to use one. So here's our property. Just to kind of give you an instant, and especially if you're new here and you don't know what's going on, this is Highway 70. Our church currently sits over here. This is Highway 70. You say, well, where's our turnoff coming? That is right across the street from 5 Mile Road. Is that the correct name? 5 Mile Road is right here, okay? There's a little whoop-de-whoop here, and then you're up here, and then there's a bunch of tires over here, and then we go down here, and there's houses, and then this right here is Ladd-Wright Road, okay? Now, we know that that road's not very usable for us. We'll use it only when we have to, but that's Ladd-Wright Road. And then this is Lawnville here, okay? We're going to build this in phases, okay? Financially, we can build and not stop ministry. That was so important to me. Listen to me, what I was not willing to do. I was not even willing to start this process if it meant starting this to invest in brick and mortar and to take away from ministry. What you saw here this morning with the baptisms and the babies and you, that's what the church is about. The church isn't about brick and mortar. You understand what I'm telling you? And what we're building is not a monument to ourselves. It's not for me. Even if you look around this place, you will not find my name. And if you came in here and I haven't introduced myself, unless you sat by somebody that told you my name, you may not know it. We are not in the business of building things to man. We are building what we're building to Jesus Christ, okay? You understand that? And so you need to know that from a philosophy standpoint, because I'm not thinking in terms of building this big crystal cathedral so that we can all stand back and go, yeah, that's my church. We're building something that we can use because we are the church, all right? So we're going to do it in phases. It's going to cost us. Make no mistake. Building ain't cheap. So here's what we're going to do. Here's phase one. Y'all ready to follow the little red laser? Phase one is going to be our entrance here, all the way up, through this parking lot here, all the way back down, and this building here. All right, you saw it on the video. I'm going to tell you about it in just a second. All of this is phase one. And then this road that goes out to Lawnville. Won't you be glad to have 2 entrances and 2 exits finally? And then you won't have to stand up there at that stop sign forever and ever and ever. And, look, watch this, everybody. Watch. See our parking lot? Here's our other parking lot. It's coming phase 2. You see our parking lot? There are no roads in that parking lot. Isn't that awesome? Fantastic. All right. Now, here's what's going to happen. We're going to build this part first. Phase 2 is going to be this parking lot and part of this building that I'm going to show you in just a second. What about the ball fields, Phillip? We're going to start that as soon as we get up on the property. Our main objective right now, day one, is to get into our facility. Now, watch this. The reason that it's the chicken or egg, but we had to get up here in order to make what we need to make happen. This whole building right here, I'm about to show you in just a second, is phase 1. The dark side of this building here is complete finished during phase 1. The lighter side is under roof and usable, but not finished. We will use all of this in phase 1. Y'all with me? You'll hear more about this as it comes. I just want to try and tell you as much as I can this morning. These parking lots, anybody want to guess? Don't say it out loud. I'm going to answer my question. Sorry, it's not open mic day. All right, so we have 120 parking spaces currently at the Grove, 120. You may think 120 is a lot till you come here about 11:15 and realize it's not. We have 120. When we build our first phase and all of our parking lots here, we'll be over 250, closing in on 300. Doesn't that sound good? That's pretty awesome, right? Hey, you want me to tell you something else? Even if you have to get this space back here, you don't have to walk through any grass to get all the way up to here. Isn't that cool? And finally, we're going to use that little golf cart to come out here and get you. Now, somebody stopped me after the first service and said, why don't you sell these parking spots? And that's how you can raise your money. I think that's a fantastic idea. I'll sell all of these lots right here for $100,000. Anybody that wants them can come get them. All right. Now, that's phase 1. Phase 2 is this little road here, which allows us to access other areas of our property. That's phase 2, all right? And look at what also is going to happen in phase 1 and phase 2 is we have multiple baseball fields that our community desperately needs. We have an outdoor basketball facility here, outdoor, right? Do you know who helped me plan this map? Outdoor. This here is a volleyball court. This here are two things you can't really see this morning, but they are awesome. Right here is a splash pad, and that's a pavilion. So all you mamas and daddies throughout the summer, you want something to do, come up here, use our pavilion, and let your kiddos play in the splash pad. This here is our soccer, football, rugby field, all right? So that's all phase 1, phase 2. When we roll into phase 1, October we start phase 1. When we roll in here in about 18 months... Now, they laughed when I said we're going to be in there in 18 months. But I told them we were going to make today, and we did, didn't we? And they said, oh, we can't talk about anything till May. I said, okay, we're here. You know, I'm walking in that building in 18 months. Y'all can come with me or not? All right, so when we walk in this building, we're going to immediately start on phase 2. You want to show me the front, please, David? This is the front part of our building. Now, listen, this is a rendering. Don't worry about the colors. Don't worry about, I get caught up in it because I want like a big old thing of orange across here, like a helicopter pad. Anyways, whatever. I'm just kidding. Although I have had some pretty cool ideas. So if you don't like the colors or don't like anything, this is a rendering. Look right here. I want to show you some things. First thing that you need to know is this is that side of the building that will be under roof but not completely finished. In phase 2, this building here goes to 2 floors. Upstairs will be our small group Sunday school, Grove Academy classrooms. Downstairs will be our children and student areas inside of this building here, okay? It'll also have our office spaces in phase 2. You say, well, what are you going to do about an office in phase 1? We have actually, I've talked to all my staff, it's more important that we get you there than us here. We're actually going to use the unfinished space for our offices until we complete phase 2 because we don't need offices. We like to be out amongst you guys anyway. So that's all going to be, and during phase 1, when we get moved over here, we will use this space for our adult Sunday school class until we finish it, okay? Also, in this phase right here, in this space, this is finished phase 1. This is the state-of-the-art children and nursery area. It's going to be larger than what you've seen here. It's going to be newer than anything that's in our community. It's going to be fantastic. You want to say anything about our children's area real quick?
Yeah, as we were starting this process, one of the big things they asked is, what's important to y'all? The children's and nursery. We have so many children, so many nursery. And then if you're new here and you go to drop your kid off in the nursery, one, you get lost trying to come back here, or it's not secure. It doesn't look good. It's kind of a bad look. So, and I got a laser pointer too. And in these little areas right here, I couldn't let them one-up me. And it made it easier. It made sense. So when you get dropped off right here, you walk in the doors. Immediately to the left is your children's area, nursery area. It'll be state-of-the-art, a lot bigger than what we have now. It'll be secure. It'll be top of the line. So that was really, really important to us. So in this area, it's easy to get to and it's secure. And then obviously our sanctuary and a gathering area. We don't have anywhere to gather right now. We have right out here, and there are hallways that you got to turn sideways to get by each other. That's not good for ministry at all. So having that area, and then this area, yes, it's unfinished, but students can be meeting in there, and then we got my favorite part right there. We got the basketball court that we can use for students as we come in and out, and we're gonna utilize it to the capacity that we can.
Couple of things so you know before we wrap this up this morning. This right here, the tall section, is our worship center. Our worship center on the day that we move in will seat right at 800 people. All right? That'll make us the largest seated auditorium in Roane County. I don't say that to be braggadocious. I'm just kind of giving you an idea of where we're headed. That's phase one. When we complete the second phase here, our auditorium will go to 1,100 seats, okay? So we have finally room to grow. Finally room to grow. You say, what's our auditorium right now? It's about 450?
430, 440 on the floor.
Then, okay. So we're gonna almost double on day one here, all right? Now let me tell you something else. You all look at this, and if you're interested in building a traditional church, that's not what you're getting, okay? So if you are, we're not. We are building something that will outlast us. I've asked the architects and everybody that's working in every capacity of what they're doing, I want them to get way out in front of that, and let's think into our future. If we're going to have a Grove Academy, if we're going to be working in addiction, if we're going to be working with children, I don't want to build something from the past. I want to build something from the future or into the future so that our children can use it. Smart boards, all that other kind of stuff for our school and for our Sunday school classrooms. You're going to notice some things. We're going to be a church that's going to try some things that nobody else is. You look right here. You see those little doors right there? Those are windows. You see those windows? See those? Rendering is still a rendering. Go ahead and click that next picture. See these doors right here? Boop, doop, 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 doop. Those are windows. You know what those are? Those are actually roll-up doors in the front and the back of the church. Why did you put roll-up doors in it? That doesn't make any sense. My old church never had roll-up doors. I know it didn't. And we're not doing car maintenance, if that's what you're thinking too. But when we start our Grove Academy, when the kid is sitting in first grade, and if the teacher decides that you know what, today we want to go outside and have class outside because it would be conducive for my kids learning, here's all the teacher's going to have to do is roll her door up and step outside. She will have a space outside each one of those. Remember, it's a rendering. She'll have a space outside so that she could teach her kids outside or inside. Will they use it on Sunday mornings? I don't know. You ever been to children and get locked in there while I'm preaching? I guarantee they'll open every door and every window, all right? You're going to have some stuff in this particular facility, the first one that we build, that is going to radically change the future of our community. Now, I want to say this to you, and we're going to get out of here today. Talking about it is awesome. Dreaming is awesome. But today, I'm not nervous. I'm courageous because I've turned it over to you. God has been bringing us to this point. God is doing some really great stuff. You say, Phil, what's this going to look like? What's the school going to look like? I don't have a clue yet. We haven't even got that far into it. But I want to help. I want to do great. We're going to need your help, all right? We're not being exclusive. We were just getting to this point so we could turn it over to you. The truth of the matter is all of this is well and good, but if the church doesn't show up, it's dead in the water. Now, I'm going to tell you something that I've learned, and I don't mean this bad or negative, and I'm not being ugly. But we live in a community, and our community is not unlike a lot of other communities that surround us. There's a limit on how far you can go. In fact, there's a spirit that connects in East Tennessee unlike any other, where we would rather worship the past than to step out and go after the future. Where we want to hold and play it safe instead of going and doing something that's new. We're scared of something new because we've never seen it before. Right? I mean, we fuss about things like, they painted the ceiling black. Right? But you eat at Aubrey's every other weekend. They got a black ceiling. We look at things that have never been done and we hold back. Not to mention, there's a whole spirit of not letting people achieve past a certain place. What I'm telling you is this, is in order to do this, you're going to have to step out in courageous faith. God is about to utilize and mobilize this church to forever reshape our community. It's going to reshape Roane County. It's going to reshape our community as a whole. It's going to reshape how people look at what a church is supposed to be and how it's supposed to engage its community and share Jesus Christ. It's going to affect people on so many levels, and we can't back down, because I can tell you this, it took us a while to get to this point, and I'm telling you right now, on October 1st, when we break ground for that, I'm telling you between now and then, the enemy is going to come through spiritual warfare to stop what's going on. He doesn't want that to happen. He'd rather bury us in the past down in old Johnston Valley than to ever see us secure the future that God had prepared for us. And the question is, can you do it? Now, we're sitting on about $700,000 in the bank. We're not near where we need to be. What we need is we need to raise about $400,000 cash. You say, well, are you going to start a campaign to do that? Yes, sir, we are. How long is your capital campaign to raise $400,000? You got a week. Well, our Easter offering's coming, right? You guys raise $100,000 without anybody even asking you. You'll give $100,000. I'm not talking about cash. I'm not talking about filling out the envelope. You'll drop $100,000 on or $150 cash and not worry about where it's going. You'll feed people in other countries that you've never seen. So when these guys said we need to raise $400,000 cash, I said we're going to do it. They said how soon? I said Easter's on its way. Next Sunday, we're going to have our Easter offering. I'm going to tell you something. And I'm going to pray, and we're going to take up our offering today, and I'm going to get you out of here. We're finishing different, unless Wade wants to say something. Which I'm sure he does. I'm just kidding. I want you to listen to what I'm about to tell you. Where we're going and what we're about to give to doesn't affect someone just in another country. It doesn't affect someone who's just in poverty level. What you're about to do and what you're about to give to is going to affect your children, your grandchildren, and their children. You know, in 1981 and 1980, 1979, there was a group of people that were in that building right over there. And they began to give. And they built this building. And it's been here for years and years and years. And I would just about bet that most of those folks are not here today. And they cannot see the babies that were dedicated. But because of the decision they made in 1980, there were 10 babies up here being dedicated to Jesus Christ. Because of the decision they made in 1979, there were 3 children who were baptized. Ask any of their parents how much they were willing to pay to have that moment. And I guarantee you, whatever he paid in 1979, it would far exceed that. We have got to be men and women who step out in advance and pay it forward. See, we've got this understanding that maybe if I give enough to God, He'll give me money back. Like if I give Him $1,000, He gives me $2,000. But God doesn't always give back in finances. Did you know that? Sometimes you give from a financial understanding, but God gives you back by allowing your son to be saved. Or maybe allowing your daughter to grow up to be the next missionary somewhere. God pays us back in different ways, but that's not the issue. The issue is are we willing to give to see what God's birthed in our heart come to fruition? We're going to take up our Easter offering next Sunday, and we're going to give big. You know, really, here's what I told Tyler. I said, Tyler, if I had 100 families give $4,000, we hit it. 100 families give $4,000. You say, well, I ain't got no $4,000. Well, give what you can. If I had one dude in here step up and give $400,000, you could take the pressure off of the rest of us. I'll give you the whole first row of parking lots. I'll put your name on something, right? I'll tell your story every Sunday right after we talk about Jesus. If all of us give something, it's going to happen. I know it's difficult. Me and Mandy are praying about it right now. If you come by our house, I've got grass up to my knees because my yard needs to be mowed. Why don't you mow your yard? Because my lawnmower broke. Why don't you buy a new one? Because I'm about to give my lawnmower money to Jesus. What are you going to do about your yard? I'm buying goats. What's it your business? Right? We've all got to think about how we can give. Wade, do you have anything?
You want me to say anything?
Sure, man. Say something. We're about to get out of here. My guys that are going to take up the offering today, come on down.
Yeah. Super quick, I just want to say this. Number one, it's been an incredible honor to serve on stewardship with an incredible group of people. For the last few years, people even before did a great job to get us where we are. There are a couple things you need to know about where we find ourselves financially and what changed it. About 2 years ago right now, our giving was terrible. We were having trouble making budget. And Phillip preached on that 2 or 3 times, well, no more than 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 series really. And your giving changed, and it has been fantastic since then. At the same time, our budgeting has been very responsible, and our staff has spent below budget consistently. And we've been banking that cash, waiting for this moment now, and that's why we find ourselves in the position that we are. God's been really good to us. Second of all, we've been extremely diligent in our planning. We're sitting up here on stage symbolically because our leader, our pastor, has cast our vision, has given us a plan as God's worked in his heart to plant that vision. So we stand behind here in full support. Stewardship committee, executive team, which is the chair of your deacons, that's David. Chair of your trustees, which is Jesse, and Travis Diggs, who can't be here today, who's chair of our personnel, representing that committee. And then trustees as well, as we work with them. So there's full support from your leadership to do this. So let me say this. This is the last thing I'll say, and I'll get off stage, and we can pray and take up our offering. Several years ago, Phillip set our identity as a church. And that when he set that identity, it hooked me into this church forever, because he said this: we're going to be a group of people that lean so far out on Jesus, so far out on faith, that if he doesn't show up, we're a failure. It won't work. It's not going to happen, right? But every single time that we've leaned out, he's shown up. And he's going to this time again. Faith without works is what? Dead, right? This is a huge step of faith for our church. We are leaning way out on Jesus to show up. And he will show up, and he's going to use you to show up. So I challenge you next week, be excited about this, because we sure are, and we'll be working in the background.
God's up to some really great things. Now it's up to you. You pray about it and see what you and your family can give. We're going to give big next Sunday. I will assure you of this, that what we give in this project that we're about to start does not affect our budget in whatsoever. God has positioned us in such a way that we continue with everyday church life, and this building does not stress that, okay? And so we're pumped about that. Guys, I love you very much. It's real easy. If you want things to stay the way that they are, status quo, we want to just be status quo, we don't even do this. We just keep using what we got here and let everything stay the same. But if you want to see change come in your community, God raises up people to change it. And it is humbling to think this is the jacked up crew God has assembled to change our community. Isn't that pretty awesome? We're going to give our tithes and offerings this morning. Let me pray, and then we'll get you out of here. God, I love you. Thank you so much for this morning. So thankful for the future that you've given us. I pray that we would pray about what we can give to make this happen in our community. That the little boys and little girls, the ones that we have put shoes on their feet, we've given them backpacks, we've fed them, we've been all around their communities, and now finally they'll have a place that maybe they want to go to school, or maybe they spend their Saturdays, or whatever it might be, God, to be closer to you. God, I pray that you'd raise up men and women in here that would give above and beyond, not just their tithes and offering, but a sacrifice, something that cost them, but God, in the future, the dividends are great. God, we got a big task and we got a big goal, but you brought us here. And God, you were always opening the doors and shutting the doors to bring us right back to where you wanted us to do something far beyond we could think or ask. May this church lock arms and give above and beyond so that we might see the dream that you placed in our hearts so many years ago. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.